You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
If you raise calves, you know you can't prevent stress, but you can give your calves the boost they need to rise above challenging conditions. Nurture Boost is a uniquely formulated feed additive that supports calf lung health and enhances overall immunity to elevate your calves' ability to withstand stress. Boost your calves for better performance at boostyourcalves.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in your day, welcome to the Dairy Voice podcast by Dairy Business News. I'm your host, Connie Kuber with Sealpro Silage Barrier Films by Conner AgriScience. Thank you for joining us today. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends. Listen in to our wide variety of topics and personalities on past podcasts too. Well, the Dairy Alliance serves 11,000 farm families across an 8-state region, namely Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. They're a nonprofit funded by these dairy families to educate consumers of all ages and to promote dairy products. So my guest today is Geri Berdak, who is the CEO of the Dairy Alliance. So welcome, Geri, to the Dairy Voice podcast. Let's start by having you introduce yourself and tell us how you came to this place in your career with the Dairy Alliance.
So thank you, Connie, for having me. And hello to everybody out there listening to this podcast. Yeah, I really appreciate the question. My background, I took the helm of the Dairy Alliance as CEO back in 2020. It was during COVID. So it was a really interesting time to get into the industry and to change positions. But basically, my work as a chief executive officer is to really lead a team to solve complex problems in this fast-changing environment as we think about dairy, but the food industry in general. A little bit about myself. I come from a background of agriculture. My father grew up on a farm. It was a hog and soybean corn farm. And I always enjoyed visiting my grandma and spending time on the farm. And it really taught me the value of agriculture and the commitment that farmers make to, supply food to the population every day. Going from there, I really had an interest in food and nutrition. And so I kind of started off dedicating myself to getting a degree in food science and nutrition. And so I graduated with that degree. And then I kind of jumped into the food industry, working for a variety of companies in different levels, including PepsiCo, DuPont Nutrition, Kerry Ingredients. And also in the dairy industry, I worked with the Dairy Management Inc., so DMI, for a number of years as well, leading their Innovation Center for Health and Wellness, that committee. I think what I've learned over my career, kind of what kind of gets me to where I am today, is just that diverse experience across the food industry, from farmers to kind of how food companies approach food innovation, how to market to consumers, particularly in the area of health and wellness. And for dairy in particular, that's a real opportunity given just the value of nutrition that dairy provides to the diet every day. So just happy to be here and be able to leverage all the experience I've gathered over my career to really help, dairy farmers in the Southeast succeed.
It's really good to meet you.
It's good to meet you too, Connie. Thank you.
Let's start out. What are the top priorities as the CEO of the Dairy Alliance? And maybe you can even start with what the Dairy Alliance does. I tried to give a little bit of description, but maybe you could do a better job of that.
No, I thought you did an awesome job. Our role really is to make our farmers here in the Southeast successful, our dairy farmers. And to do that, our main priority is really to be a market-centric, consumer-centric organization that really creates demand for dairy, not only just in the Southeast, but for, all products, nationally, because as you know, milk moves every place across the U.S. And so we want to make sure that markets are growing for dairy all across the U.S., but particularly doing what we can to make our farmers in the Southeast successful. So to do that, we have 4 really important priorities that we concentrate on. The one is protecting and growing dairy volume. That's really important. When you think about that, that's making sure that we understand consumers, what their needs are, what their interests are, but then finding a way to promote dairy's benefits to make consumers' lives better. Over time, I think dairy, in our research shows, has lost a little of its health halo. Back in the day, it was known for its calcium and bone health, but there's so many more benefits that dairy provide. And so for us, we really focus on understanding where the opportunities are and doing our best to promote how dairy meets those consumer needs. And then also just managing misinformation out there. I mean, there's so much misinformation. So just making sure we base our knowledge and correcting anything so that it's science-led. The second one is to capture new market segments. So we recognize that fluid milk and yogurt and cheese have great market opportunities, but there are new market opportunities that we're constantly evaluating. And we get to that by understanding where our consumer needs are changing. So like one example is, the market for lactose-free milk. We've tracked over time the consumers. There's a growing number of consumers who believe that they're lactose intolerant or they can't consume dairy for that reason. There are so many new innovative lactose-free products out there. And so being able to identify how we position those products or even create awareness around those products kind of help capture those consumers and keep them in the dairy category. Other areas are like export markets or even looking at milk and dairy as an ingredient in a product. Love our milk and our yogurt and dairy, but could milk be a value-added nutritional asset to a formulated beverage? And we're seeing opportunity for dairy to grow in those segments. So capturing those new market segments and making sure dairy stays relevant there is our second priority.
Hey there, after you've finished enjoying this podcast, might I recommend you join me, Tim Hammerich, and our guests on Clarity at Work from Zoetis. We'll be talking genetics and their place on the dairy. You've got a seat at the table as we discuss innovations, what's next for the industry, and more.
I have to find the value in everything that I do, and I still find value in Clarified Plus, so we're going to continue to use it.
Just search for Clarity at Work wherever you listen to podcasts. Once you finish with this podcast, of course.
I mentioned that we work for Southeast dairy farmers here. And one of the big things we do and one of the priorities we focus on is finding a way to keep them competitive by increasing the adoption of climate smart practices. So more and more consumers and manufacturers care about sustainability. And so making sure that our dairy farm families remain sustainable, or how we tell that story about how they're sustainable so that we don't lose the ability for them to be able to market their milk. So that's really important to us. And then lastly, again, really focused on the success of our dairy farmers here in the Southeast. It's really enabling their ability to supply, the growing demand for dairy. And in our Southeast area, we're really a fluid milk production area. So how can we encourage investment in processing and new innovative ways to make their dairy milk meet consumers' needs, things like lactose-free, like aseptic, so milk becomes more convenient and transportable across the nation, and even just opening up new markets, like I said, around exports and other things. Just looking at the infrastructure, kind of helping sell the Southeast so that we're an area where investors want to invest in dairy, and making sure that the processing aspect of our dairy is able to continue to meet consumer needs and demand. Those are our real 4 key areas of priority as we think about the Southeast and the Dairy Alliance here.
Right. Your last point is well taken, in that farmers don't operate in a vacuum. Processors don't operate in a vacuum. Everybody needs each other in order to be successful and, like you said, sustainable. So what are the unique challenges that you face in your area, specifically the Southeast?
That's a great question. So, I think the challenges that we see are the most prominent are, well, there's several, but I think from a production perspective, we are a very fast growing population base here in the Southeast. Of the states you mentioned, 4 of those 8 states are on the top 10 list of fastest growing population centers. The challenge really is how we keep dairy farming here in the Southeast. We were chatting at the beginning of this podcast just around the price of real estate, population growth. That's not necessarily always beneficial to keeping dairies, around in our area. That definitely is something we're trying to manage, but also just the limitation of the processing in our area. It's kind of like one thing leads to another. There's less land for agriculture and expansion for dairy. There's less interest in investing in processing. Therefore, there's less opportunity for our farmers' milk to go to the places I mentioned, like with the right infrastructure investments, but then even for growth in general. So it's just that challenge of balancing agriculture with a growing population base is definitely one of those challenges we face. Also, it's our dynamically changing consumer profile. I mean, I think we represent a kind of microcosm of America, but we have our population. There's a good percentage of our population that are multicultural. The opportunity from a marketing perspective, as I mentioned, one of our key focus areas is creating demand for dairy, is understanding, how can we make sure we continuously appeal to the changing dynamics and the multicultural backgrounds of our consumer base. And it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. I talked about lactose free, finding ways to understand how our dairy products can meet those consumer needs through innovation, and those kind of things create an opportunity for us. So I'd say those are probably top two things that are the most challenging in the area here in the Southeast.
In communicating with consumers about what goes on the farm and bridging that gap between consumers and farmers, how do you communicate to them? And tell me about your staff that does that for you.
The way we engage with our farmer base here, and we have 1,100 farm families in our Southeast area. The way we engage with those farmers is I lead a board of 23 farmers that represent their states. What we do is we, as experts in the field and the marketing of the product, the way we always talk about the way we work is our farmers have the expertise from developing the milk to marketing the milk, and then they rely on our expertise to then take that milk and make sure that we can sell it or market it into, to the population through the supply chain, as you mentioned. I lead a board that represents our farmers across the 8-state area, and we share insights around where the opportunities are and challenges in the marketplace. And then we get their feedback and guidance on how they want their dollars invested. We are a checkoff program, meaning that 15 cents of their 100-weight milk comes to our organization. So we work for our farmers to develop those markets. And so their input is extremely valuable to us to make sure we're spending their dollars in a way that is the way they want to see it. We have a board in each one of our states. We have 8 sub-boards that we meet with on a year-to-year basis, and we collect feedback as well. We have a staff of, I think we're at 35 individuals, and we're based in Atlanta, but we have representation within each of our 8 states so that we can meet with our farmers regularly, and we're available to them when they need us to be. The best way I can answer your question around our staff and my staff and how they work is kind of about the culture that we exhibit. Our focus really is on collaboration. And we really believe that collaboration is what's going to drive success, not only as a team, but how we work in the industry, given that dairy is such a large industry and there's so many different groups that are focused on similar goals that we have. Mm-hmm. But we are a diverse team of market-minded, goal-oriented individuals with a passion for purposeful innovation. And we bring value. Our focus is to bring value to dairy farm families in the Southeast. We set our sights on overcoming challenges. We assume positive intent. We respect and honor diversity of thought, experience, and perspective, and we set clear expectations and collaborate to support each other to really reach for extraordinary results. And so we drive by that culture every day. It gets us up in the morning is the success that we bring for our farmers. We really are committed to our farmers' success.
Get your Sealpro silage barrier film today. Protect the seed, fertilizer, labor, and expensive inputs that you've invested in. Choose best-in-class Sealpro now in 3 different versions: traditional 2-roll application, our new co-rolled application, and super simple and wildly successful 1-layer film, Sealpro 1. It's easy to buy, easy to use. Contractor covering? We'll work with them. Learn more at sealprosilage.com. That's SEALPRO silage.com. Family owned and operated for over 25 years. 559-779-5961. That's 559-779-5961. Now, on the other hand, what role does the Dairy Alliance play in communicating to consumers?
Yeah, we, over the last 3-4 years since I've been in my role, our focus has been to be a very marketing-driven organization. what has been successful for us is to first understand our consumer very well, understand what motivates them, what they care about. And we've invested research to become extremely knowledgeable about our consumer. And then we understand where the value is in dairy and meeting the needs that they're seeking. And then we work hard to develop campaigns and promotional programs that really resonate with them on the value of dairy and including dairy in their day-to-day, diet. And so we market through a variety of different ways. So once we do that, we concentrate on digital for the most part, because just based on our research, we find that's where consumers are getting most of their information. We also leverage influencers because we know that that's a great way to get a big reach within our consumer base. And we use our farmers as influencers, actually, but we also rely on lifestyle influencers, food influencers, and science and research influencers as well. One of the things that we're doing, and we've been doing now for about 4 years, that we find has been very, very successful, is using sport athlete influencers. So in the Southeast, as we've learned about our consumer, we recognize that the cultural nuances of our consumer is they love food, family, God, and sports. And so sports is one of those things. And, I moved here into the Atlanta area about 5 years ago, and I have seen this. This is very true, that sports really brings families together, not only at the high school level, but the collegiate level. Sure. And so we have found that by sponsoring collegiate athletes to carry the message around the role of dairy and milk in particular to performance has really, really resonated and allowed dairy to stand out. So there's a lot of research about milk being the perfect recovery beverage. It's like the original sports drink back in the day. And so we have found that benefit using that athlete influencer has really made a big difference and has really driven results for us here in the Southeast.
Right. Oh, you've got the whole SEC conference right there.
Exactly. The SEC is so big here.
Oh,
yes.
Sure. And just about everything, football, baseball, basketball, you've got a real hotbed for a great marketing program there. That's super. Thanks. The other point I wanted to make too is you talked about research. And I think so often we, as dairy farmers, we kind of go, gee, do they have to ask all those questions? Can't they just figure it out? That the research is such an important part of spending your dollars wisely. You can have marketing plans all day long, but if they don't reach the people in the way that you want to reach them, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we found that to be true. And, I think the way I think about it is we're a very outside in organization. We really understand the market and our consumer, and then we figure out how to be relevant versus inside out, meaning we come up with ideas and try to look for a market to make that, to fit that message. And so we find, just my experience over my career and being an expert in health and wellness marketing, I've learned over and over again the success of that. The other thing too, just to add, Connie, to your point, is that measurement is so important as well, because even though we get really good at knowing our consumer, it's really important to see whether we're making an impact with our message. It's a trial and error kind of thing. And just being able to monitor and measure and adjust as necessary is very, very important. And we found that to be important as well.
You've obviously done very well with this. How do you plan to build upon the Dairy Alliance's current success that you have now?
Building that strong demand across our consumer base, our 57 million consumers, has been a focus. And, we are seeing results. What we're seeing, just to add a comment there, is milk had been declining pretty much other than COVID, the year of COVID. And we're actually in 24 as of Q2, we're seeing that in our area, it's actually growing by 1.8%. So we are seeing an impact on growth with regard to a lot of our marketing programs. We're excited about that. But I think, the vision for the future here is, as we build that demand, it's just really important for us to continue to sell the Southeast as a great opportunity for investment back to infrastructure and innovation. And we're building a roadmap on how to best do this for our Southeast dairy farmers. But there are opportunities that exist in developing market innovation and dairy products that cater to these consumer changing preferences, like I mentioned, functional foods, artisanal cheese, dairy-based snacks. There's so much potential there. And for us to be able to look at that supply chain and make sure that our farmers have access to those markets is going to be very important. investments in technologies that improve environmental sustainability of farming, as I mentioned, is one of our priorities, creating a competitive advantage for our farmers in the area of sustainability. So continuing to invest in looking for grant opportunities to ensure that our farmers are supported and continuously making their farms sustainable so they remain competitive. Looking at dairy herd health, ways that production can be increased on their farms, even just quality of milk so that they may remain competitive and kind of offset any issues around transportation costs, which is one of the key issues here in the Southeast. Mm-hmm. So going from really to building that market, we've been doing such a great job of doing that, but now just making sure that we're keeping up with those markets by investing in our dairy farming industry so that our farmers stay there and that becomes a growth market for them.
How do you engage with farmers in your role, or how does your staff engage with them? You have field representatives, producer meetings. How do you do that?
So we have our board meetings, which, like I mentioned before, helps us get the directional guidance that we need from our farmers. We also participate in conferences, and we usually speak at those conferences to share our vision and the work that we're doing to try to bring awareness so that our farmers can come to us. We create lots of resources. I mentioned grant opportunities. We're seeking those out, and we do our best to communicate those. And then we have a website, and on that website, we have a lot of portals of information too that we try to get out there for our farmers to access. The place to go would be www.thedairyalliance.com. The other two things we do is we have a Dairy Advocates of the Southeast, a closed Facebook forum by which we share information for our dairy farmers only so that they know what's going on, but also can access. We put links to resources, information. We also send out a Friday e-newsletter to all of our farmers in our area that give them updates on the work we're doing. Again, news that's happening that affects them. If there's issues in the industry, we make them aware, and we give them, again, links to tools like USDA, the farm program, just other places so that they have at their reach what they need to be able to remain and continue to be successful. So we do our best to communicate and try to make sure that our farmers have access to everything we're doing as much as we can.
That being said, too, what is your vision for the future of the Dairy Alliance?
Based on everything I mentioned, the vision we have is that we have dairy farming in the future. 5-10 years from now, we have a vital, vibrant dairy industry. And that's our vision. And that's why, that's our focus and really at core of everything we're doing today.
And we talked about research being important. What is the most important piece in developing a marketing plan for the Dairy Alliance?
Yeah, I'd say it's really understanding the consumer, and when I say that, I mean, not just what motivates them, why they buy dairy, why they don't buy dairy, but also how they get their information, who influences them. All of that is just really, really key to a very smart, very effective program. Also, like we talked about, the research that supports that. So we have high confidence in the work we're doing is going to deliver results. Then the measurement piece that enables us to be able to ensure that we are, moving the needle. That's what we find. I'd say that, any marketer, I would say that is the key to success in marketing, because it's such a, such a dynamic, changing marketplace with consumers, or things change so quickly. So you just always have to have a handle on it and make sure that you're, reaching your audience effectively.
Personally, what advice do you have for people that are starting out in marketing and promotion positions?
Know your audience, do the research that you need to understand your audience. It's worth the investment. It's very, very, I know it might take a little more time, but it's very much worth it. Also stay updated. I mentioned the marketplace continues to evolve. Marketing trends and tools, they change, and we talk about AI. I mean, there's just so much industry changing in the industry. You've got to stay updated, and you've got to be able to keep ahead of that. Learning the basics, solid understanding of the fundamental marketing concepts, such as the 4 Ps, product, price, placement, promotion, being able to do a SWOT analysis and really understand how to segment your consumers so you're reaching the right consumer with the right message at the right time. Digital is really important. Going back 20 years, 10 years ago, we still read from magazines. Now, the majority of consumers get things online through social platforms or YouTube. They use their smartphone. So make sure that you understand that behavior, how they consume content, and mostly digital, and how you can make sure you're reaching them that way. And then, like I mentioned, content is king. That's where research comes in to make sure you're refining your messaging so it's relevant, but just do invest in very effective content using digital to get it out to your consumer.
We even find that with advertising our products to farmers, digital is becoming more and more and more important to be engaging, and that's where people are getting their information.
Absolutely. And even like you said, farmers and it's great to see that happening, because I think it's a much more effective and cost-effective way to reach them too. So you can reach a lot more, whether it's farmers or consumers, with a lot less money. So it's been very helpful.
Right.
And then, like, the last thing I would say is just analyze and adapt, use data and analytics to measure your effectiveness, and then understand data so that you can leverage it to continuously improve. And then, certainly creativity and continue to stay innovative, and how you get your message out there is really important. So those are the big things I'd recommend to any marketer out there looking to get better.
Right. What motivates you to come to work every day?
What motivates me really is the incredible, hardworking dairy farmers, and everywhere in the United States, but particularly in our area. Their job is very demanding, and it involves long hours. And I think we take that commitment, that work ethic, and I know for myself, I see that, and I want to make sure every day that we're doing all we can to support their success. And I know my staff does that as well, and we emulate their commitment to that work ethic and hardworking ethic every day. They work hard. We see how they work hard. That's what gets me up, is their success every day.
Great. We've had a really great conversation. We've talked about the priorities of the Dairy Alliance. We've talked about the different challenges that you have faced as an alliance, your structure and the collaboration that you have with your staff and with the farmers and with food processing companies and everyone involved in the industry. We've heard about the vision for the future of the Dairy Alliance. And thank you for the advice for new marketers. I'm sure that people will enjoy that are starting out in their careers.
Can't thank you enough for this. I've enjoyed it. And thank you again, Connie, for having me on your program.
Now, you had mentioned a website before. Is there a website that people can go to find out more about the Dairy Alliance?
Yes, it would be the site I mentioned, which is www.thedairyalliance.com.
Well, thank you very much. We've been talking to Geri Berdak, who is the CEO of the Dairy Alliance. I'm Connie Kuber with Sealpro Silage Barrier Film by Connor Agriscience. And you have been listening to DairyVoice by Dairy Business News. Please subscribe, like, and share the podcast. We appreciate the care and perseverance of all dairy farmers, and especially as we head into harvest. Please stay hydrated, stay rested, and fed. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again very soon.